Hi boys and girls, I'm back with a new friend. This is Penny, my dog. Say hi, Penny. Say hi. And a new book. I'm still outside in my yard. Okay. This book is called Rocket Writes a Story by Tad Hills. And I think last week or the week before, I read Rocket Learns to Read. Remember, with his teacher, the little bird? So now Rocket writes a story. So this is cool. Let's see. Rocket Writes a Story by Tad Hills. Oh, little bird. Little teacher bird. When I open it, I see lots of cards with labeled pictures. I see zigzag, box, grapes. So whatever the picture's of, Rocket has written the name of it. Penny, you want to listen to the story? Come on. Okay. Rocket loved books. He loved to read them to himself or to sit quietly by his teacher, the little yellow bird, as she read them aloud. Rocket even liked the way books smelled. When he opened a new book, it smelled like a place he'd never been to, like a friend he'd never met. The little yellow bird agreed. Books are inspiring. They make me sing. Rocket loved words, too. After snack time, his teacher would say, Rocket, why don't you use that nose of yours to sniff out some new words? And off he'd go. He'd fetch some nice ones like buttercup and bug and feather. Oh, whatever he found. The buttercup is a little flower that he has here. And nest. I'm looking for words, Rocket would announce to anyone who'd listen. We'll see that nest up in the tree. Rocket always brought his words back to the classroom and wrote them down. The little yellow bird would help him spell the tricky ones, and then they'd hang them on their word tree. Sometimes the bird added her own words to the collection. This one is small, but I promise it'll come in handy, she'd say. Magnificent. See, the word is up. It's a small word, but the teacher said it would come in handy. Magnificent, chirped the little yellow bird once their tree was covered. Now what shall we do with all these splendid words? Rocket thought all afternoon. Then he had an idea. Ooh, look at their word tree. We have our high-frequency words, our heart words, on cards in our classroom too. They help us to be able to spell when we're doing our writing. Rocket left school that day with a very waggy tail. I'm going to write a story, he declared to Fred and Emma. My story will be an adventure about the great wide world, he told a butterfly. I will use many words, he explained to Mr. Barker. Oh, that must be Mr. Barker there. Sorry, a bee just buzzed by me, and did you see me jump and go, ooh? I know the bee won't hurt me, but sometimes they just startle me. Still. Hello up there, he called as he passed the tree where he had found the word nest. I'm going to write a story. Oh, there's the tree with the nest. There's a little bit of a surprise in this book. Maybe you'll know what it is. The next day, Rocket returned to his classroom. It was time to begin. He looked down at the blank page, and the blank page looked up at him. But no story would come. At snack time, Rocket gave up. I don't know what to write, he told his teacher. A lot of us have had that happen to us before, too. We just didn't know what to write. We were just blank. We didn't know what to say or write. "Don't worry," the little yellow bird replied. "One of the hardest parts of writing is coming up with a good story. But it's one of the most fun, too. Perhaps you want to write about something you've seen." "A bug?" asked Rocket. "Yes," sang his teacher. "Stories need good characters." Characters. "Or what about something that happened to you, or something you really enjoy?" "My favorite stick?" suggested Rocket. "Of course," said the bird. "Or you could write about something that inspires you." "Inspires me?" asked Rocket. "Yes, something that excites you," the little yellow bird sang. Rocket took a walk and looked for inspiration. He thought about the friends he knew and places he'd been. He stuck his nose high in the air and sniffed the gentle breeze. And there it was, a delightful smell of pine needles and feathers. Inspiration! For the rest of the morning he thought about feathers and pine needles and feathers. That afternoon he started to write. In the evening, Rocket followed the beautiful smell until he found himself at the tree with the nest. "Hello again," he called into the branches. "Is anyone home?" He heard rustling from above, but no one answered. "I'm sorry to disturb you, but I must tell you that you smell nice. Very inspiring. May I ask who you are?" Still nothing. "Perhaps I'll come back at a more convenient time," he said, and he trotted off. That night, as Rocket watched the stars, he thought about feathers and a nest in a pine tree. He thought about his story and his collection of words. Ooh, I see the crescent moon. On his way to school the next day, Rocket was surprised by what he saw. "A brand new word," he said, "and it's already written down. It says..." He tried to sound the word out. "Owl," came a quiet voice from the branches. "It says owl." "That's me." "Thank you, Owl," Rocket called. "I'm always looking for words, and this one's a beauty." "Oh, an owl. That's the surprise I was talking about." Rocket ran all the way to his classroom. O-W-L, owl. "Now there's a word you don't hear every day," chirped the little yellow bird. "Only 3 letters, but what a word!" "It was a present," explained Rocket, and he added the new word to his story. You see how the owl wrote O-W-L down here on the ground for Rocket? She was telling her name. "I'm writing a story about you," Rocket announced proudly to the owl the next morning. The owl poked her head out of her nest, and for the first time Rocket saw her friendly face. Her big round eyes blinked below feathery tufts. "About me?" she asked softly. "Would you like to come down and hear it?" asked Rocket. "Thank you, but I think I'll listen from my nest," the owl answered. So Rocket cleared his throat and began to read. "Once there was an owl. She smelled like feathers and pine needles. She lived in a tree." The owl's eyes widened. "Is there more?" "There will be," said Rocket, as he's writing his story. But it seems like the owl's not quite ready to come down out of the safety of her nest just yet. Each day, Rocket worked on his story. He wrote words down and crossed words out. When things were going well, he wagged his tail. When he didn't know what to write, he growled. Sometimes he drew pictures for his story, or took a walk in the meadow to look for inspiration. So sometimes he didn't know what to write, but he drew pictures. We do that too, right? We always draw pictures with our story just to help us. The little yellow bird encouraged him. "Remember, stories take time," she'd say. She wanted to know more about the owl and asked Rocket questions. "Why do you think the owl wouldn't come down?" "What color is her beak?" What does she do every day? See, by asking these questions, it helps Rocket to think about what he can write, because when he's answering those questions, he's writing in part of his story. Rocket wanted to know more about the owl, too. He visited her tree often and read her his story, which changed every day. The owl was captivated, meaning she was just so interested in his story. And when Rocket stopped, she would always ask, "Then what happened?" Notice what's happening with the tree and the owl. She's in her nest. She's coming a little bit lower. And this one, she's on the last bottom branch. Oh, and then look. At last the day came when Rocket knew he was finished. "What a fine story," chirped the little yellow bird after she'd read it. Rocket ran to the owl's pine tree. "It's done," he called. "Come listen." And so down and down came the owl, till she was right beside Rocket. Then Rocket began to read. He read about an owl with friendly eyes and a beak the color of a buttercup. She lived in a high nest in a tree on the edge of a meadow and smelled like pine needles and feathers. She liked to nap in the daytime and listen to stories. Branch by branch, the owl came down from her nest. Rocket read. She was shy, but she was brave, too. Suddenly, Rocket stopped. He wrote something on his paper, then began to read again. One day, the owl came all the way to the ground and became my friend. The owl blinked. "Can there be one last sentence?" she asked. "Can you say, 'And the owl liked the story very much'?" "What a perfect ending," said Rocket. And it was. And here are some more cards with words that Rocket had written by the pictures. Wow, so Rocket met a new friend, and it helped him write his story. Rocket writes a story. I love that one. Boys and girls, I'd like you to think about, in this story, who the characters were. There's more than one character, someone or something in the story, right? Usually it's a person or an animal. Sometimes it could be other things that are a fiction character in the story. And also the setting of this story. Can you think about what the setting is, where the story took place? Yeah, let's think about that. Okay. All right, boys and girls, I'll see you next time for another story. Bye.